Welcome back, listeners, to another episode. Don't forget to check out the show notes for the links to things like my mentorship program. If you feel like you want to know a baseline for your culture and you're a leader, I have a culture assessment. Reach out to me about that. If you need some metal fabrication, swfindustrial.com. We do amazing stuff and we do a lot of custom stuff. So if you need anything, one links to my book or getting a hold of me or anything that I may involved with, check in the show notes down below. Let's get into the episode. All right, welcome back to the Just Some BS podcast. Today we have Laurie Barkman on. Thank you, Laurie, for coming on.
It is absolutely my pleasure. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, so I was on your podcast and I said, hey, how would you do me a solid and come over to this side?
Let's flip the mic around.
Do you do a lot of these sitting on the other side?
I do. I actually really enjoy it.
Okay. Yeah, so do I. But it's very weird when I listen to myself back. I'm like, oh, I don't like some of that.
You know what? We are always our worst critics, aren't we?
So true. I was just listening to one today and I was like, do I sound like that all the time? But anyway.
You know what? To be honest, I re-listened to your appearance on my show in preparation for today because I wanted to get your voice in my head a little bit. And you did an amazing job. You really did.
You. Well, thank you for prepping. Not everybody does. And I've been on some podcasts that don't, and I find that quite irritating. So I will hopefully be prepped enough for you. So you're good. I love to start out with LinkedIn profiles. So under your LinkedIn little bio, it says guiding entrepreneurs to create life-changing succession stories, nationally recognized business transition expert, M&A exit growth, and certified exit planning advisor. Is that correct? CEPA?
Yes, that's all correct.
Nailed it.
You nailed it.
So in under a minute, give us some context of kind of your life story, your career story, and where you're at right now.
Yeah, I've always been about growth and kind of this top line leader, and eventually found my way to managing the bottom line as a P&L owner. I was an outside hire at a third generation company. I was not family, so it was an external hire. And the intention was to be part of this company for 20 years. I was super excited about it because I'd been in startups and bigger companies. And here was a place I was, again, they were thinking long-term succession. So I was super excited about that. Short story, I was not there 20 years. I was there for 3. And the big reason why is because the company was acquired. And it was an amazing experience. Put a little money in my jeans, as we like to say, gave me some flexibility of time and freedom to make some choices about how I want to, look at how I want to add value in the world. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, was kind of looking for that right moment, and going through the M&A process, going through seeing what the family enterprise was going through, the transition with employees made me want to be part of that, and had always been, around entrepreneurs, worked in startups, like I said, but this is a whole other aspect of it. Working with mature companies in particular, I look to work with technical, analytical owners of mature companies that are looking to grow, scale, and eventually transition with success.
How do you define a mature company?
I would say, over 5 years, 7 years, something like that, just to distinguish from a startup. Okay. If we think of startup like 0 to 5. So basically saying, not that I don't love startups, I do, but when we're really trying to find product market fit, we're not focused on necessarily some of the other things that, as we have a more adolescent company, adolescence, if we think of the teenage years, right? And a more mature business. So it's not to say a mature business has to be 50 years old. It could be a sliding scale, but sure. Yeah, just essentially saying not a startup.
Yeah. So leadership, some SOPs, understanding process, what they're good at in the market, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's amazing. Well, I have lots of M&A questions because that is a world I don't really understand. And I don't know why sometimes it's so difficult and sometimes it's really easy. So I'm sure you'll have some insight on that. So you call yourself the Business Transition Sherpa, which is such a compelling image. What does that title mean to you? And how did your own exit experience shape that identity?
It's about a journey, right? If we think about the word Sherpa, it certainly makes us a connotation to a journey. And as entrepreneurs, as business owners, we are on a journey. We haven't figured it all out. We're trying to figure it out. And we need people on our team that can help us along the way. And so that's really how I've always sort of described, even when I was running the business as the P&L leader. I had tools, I had a process, but I really needed people to support me. And same thing, business owners need support. And that's just one of my favorite things to do is is be that person with them on their journey. And the other thing about when I say journey and transition, it's a movement, right? The notion of a journey is from here to there. When we use the word exit, it gives a connotation of a finite thing. I was here and now I'm there and now that's done. And I'm really looking at this as a phase of work that we have to do to prepare the business, to prepare ourselves as owners, to prepare our teams, whoever, however we need to do that. It's obviously very complex and can differ by company. But that's really the crux of it.
Is it, I don't even know if this is a fair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is it easier to grow the business by whether, is it easier to organically grow the business or grow it through M&A? And I don't even know if that's a valid question. I'm not sure.
It is a valid question. And I do workshops all the time. And when I do a growth workshop, I call it the strategic growth workshop. And part of the conversation, I like to educate my CEOs in the room around growth. We can grow at the top level organically, or the word is weird, but inorganically. And it's really getting to your question, which is, well, what's inorganic? Inorganic essentially is through acquisition. So let's just distinguish the two. I talk about, kind of pros and cons. Happy to share a couple of them. Again, it really depends on the company, what you're trying to do. What's easier, what's more difficult is obviously going to depend on the business. But let's say, what are some pros and reasons why you'd say, hey, it's easier to grow organically? Well, one reason is because these are things within our four walls that we quote unquote control. Mm-hmm. So these are things like hiring sales and marketing people, having a marketing plan and budget that we execute, having business development processes, sales processes, and having robustness around that. So that's like one example, or more than one example. Sales is different than marketing. But again, that distinction of it's within our four walls. So developing brands, developing services and products. New product innovation is organic because it's products that we are developing in-house. So here's a good example of, well, gee, that's hard and it's costly and it takes time. So if we're looking at growth, we might compare build versus buy, right? So on the build side, I have a lot of experience with this too. Teach a class about it at Carnegie Mellon, and it's called Corporate Startup Lab. Right? And just the name of it makes us think, oh, wait a minute. Corporates can have startups? Wait, what? Yes. And, not to nerd out on all the detail, but there's a lot of ways to think about corporate innovation. And if we think about, well, we want to innovate our product. We want to create a whole new one, or we would just want to iterate and make minor improvements. That's something that we can think about, put a number on it, put resources on it, and put a timeline on it. When we're launching a completely new industry with completely new things that no one's ever heard of, obviously that's going to take even more resources. So the visual that I would give you is almost like along the x-axis.
Yep.
The longer time horizon you have, and the y-axis is complexity. You can kind of visualize the four quadrants there. And for one reason or another, a company might choose to do corporate innovation, but do more iterative, right? As opposed to like wholesale revolutionary stuff. To do the wholesale revolutionary stuff, they might say, wait a minute, we don't have the budget. We don't have the know-how. Let's go in the market and go find the people who know how to do that. And it happens a lot of times in tech companies, let's say. Mm-hmm. And that is known as acqui-hire. If you've ever seen that kind of a weird word.
Never.
Acqui-hire is a strategy to buy a company because you want their engineering talent, sure, right? Or you want their development talent. That's an example. And again, you see it a lot in kind of the tech industry. If you think about one example would be Facebook buying Instagram for some crazy $3 billion at the time or something like that. We were all looking at that going, what the heck? Like, what are they doing? Meanwhile, it was genius. That was a great strategy, right? It's totally paid off for them. And it was a big bet, right? But Facebook knew they weren't going to do that thing, and they bought the thing. But they bought it early enough that they could, kind of make it their own and benefit from it. There's other examples of when we might want to explore acquisition. There are companies who go through an exit, okay, if I can use that word. It's a sale. You're selling the company to an ESOP. So if you're familiar with
Yep.
ESOPs, I don't know if your audience is so familiar, but just to spend a moment on
Yep.
this as an example, if you're a large enough company that can become an ESOP, one of the benefits is to the employees to have at retirement a nice little nest egg if the company is increased in value. The other benefit is to the company because it becomes a tax-free enterprise. Now, for those companies that continue to grow and generate value, they have quite the little nest egg. Now, what do they do with that? They might say, well, gee, we're going to start buying businesses. I have a client that's in that space right now. They just became an ESOP. They're finding they've got extra cash in the books and they're saying, well, what are we going to do with it? And they've hired me to help them on the buy side to find the right targets. So again, there can be a number of reasons why a company chooses to go down either path.
It's so interesting because the build versus buy is something we talk about in the company all the time. And and it was totally different reasons. It's not super technical. It's not even probably the right business acumen. It's just, to me, my superpower is people, building culture, fixing SOPs, process improvement, efficiencies. Like, that's the way my brain works. So that's very much, to me, M&A solution, because it's buy something that's just a little broken and make it better. Right? That's the way I love it. And then just make the people super happy so they stay forever and you don't have attrition. And I think the build part of it is, at least in probably the construction industry, is more the lean. Do you have any insight on why certain industries are one way versus the other? Like, I watch some other industries, even in my Vistage group, that it's like M&A all the time. And then construction seems to be so build heavy, but I'm not sure why.
Okay. I serve as an advisory board member for a construction company. So I'll just put that out there. So I have some context,
Okay.
but obviously it's only one company. My clients that I serve are also, kind of AEC, right? So I don't know that I have the be all answer. I would say there are certain companies that are more quote unquote traditional. We operate how we operate. We do continuous improvement, but we're not really familiar with innovation or really ways to change. So, for example, there's certain industries that are slower to adopt technologies, right? And maybe construction can be viewed as one of them. Now, I know
Fair.
there's drones, and we have, BIM software and all these other things that we've implemented, and it helps us be more efficient, effective. We've adopted lean strategies and maybe using tools to help us visualize things in our workrooms and stuff like that. And that's great. That's more incremental, right? It's not going to be a game changer. So, I can't really put my finger for sure on the construction to say, here's what I think specifically about construction, giving a broader answer, because I think there are also other industries. When I worked in retail, I worked in e-commerce. And you would think, oh, being part of e-commerce, being part of retail, fast leader, adopt everything. No, this company's particular strategy was to be a follower. They wanted somebody else to lead and figure it out. And then once it was figured out, we would follow. That was the strategy. And maybe there's some of that thinking, again, more traditional thinking in, in construction. Now, the other thing I'll say about construction, love you guys, it's a tough industry. The margins are pretty thin.
True.
So when it comes to testing and learning, I've had the great fortune in my experience working in a couple of other industries. I had a huge marketing budget, like literally I had $100 million marketing budget in one company I worked for. So when I say I had a test and learn budget that was 5%, okay, 5% sounds reasonable, but that was $5 million. I could just test the crap out of whatever, and we had a great process for that. I would say in general, back to construction, likely they don't have a test and learn budget, and the margins are so thin, they can't take a lot of risks.
Yeah, that's really brilliant. I think you're dead on there, where it's just a constant, and we play a lot of bank with the construction industry. It's the sad truth is, you play bank with construction projects a lot of the time, and the farther down the chain you are, the bigger that usually means. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's probably why. And we're, like you said, we're a little bit behind the times on most things, to be fair.
To be fair, it's cool. I've talked to a bunch of drone companies that are targeting civil engineering,
Yep.
land surveying, because they say, hey, we think that there's opportunity there. And I think it's interesting. And I think there's definitely technologies that are emerging to help us be safer, which is a core criteria for
Yep.
construction. Quality, of course, is never ending, but we want to have safe work environments. And sometimes these jobs are just hard. And if we can leverage technology to make them safer, it'd be pretty cool. Just back to the corporate innovation at Carnegie Mellon's, the university I mentioned. We had I won't name the company, but we had a roofing business, a pretty big one. Wanted to work with as a project course, right? They sponsor the course, and they sponsored a team to look at the opportunity for um, how to evaluate rooftop inspections, right? How to do rooftop inspections after installation, because it's really time consuming. For imagine a big flat roof, right?
Yep.
Imagine like the big white boxes of Amazon buildings, right? Huge areas that you got to put roof on, and you got to make sure there's no leaks. So how do we do that? How do we do that safely? How do we do that cost effectively? That's just one example. And yeah, there's some cool technologies that can be, or maybe are, as we speak, being invented that can help with that.
Yeah, I think the glasses and the augmented reality portion, especially for manufacturing, is going to play. I was just talking to another manufacturing person a couple of weeks ago who said he bought AR glasses for his quality inspectors, that they load the drawings into the glasses and portray it onto the finished product, and it does spread green. If anything's out of kilter, it just clicks it as red, and there's your markup on your inspection. I was like, can't wait. It's
It's
brilliant.
crazy.
It
Yeah,
is
it's so
crazy.
cool.
It's so
It's
fun.
so cool. Well,
So
there's also, oh, go ahead.
no, you're good. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's another technology that I'm familiar with that is trying to address the problem of the knowledge base retiring. And if you have one person who knows how to kick the machine in just the right place, and then that person retires, what are you going to do? So they're going after the equipment maintenance side of things from a training and development, but also it ties to, I would say retention of knowledge.
Yep. Yeah, they should. I don't know if this company has a name, but if you're out there, I don't know if you're listening, but it should be like something, the tribal kick, or beating tribalism or something, because the tribal knowledge is the thing that I actually thought about this. And I thought about taking all of our individuals who are a year from retirement and interviewing them in hour-long segments for like 5 hours, and just asking very specific questions around their knowledge, pulling that out, putting that into a transcript, and building SOPs out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And hey, we could talk offline. Maybe this application is something you should take a look at.
Yeah.
You don't have to do all that work.
Yeah. So one of the standout themes in the Business Transition Handbook is the emotional side of selling. What's a moment in your work when you saw a client go from "I'm not ready" to truly embracing the transition?
I have a client in construction services, and he is in his later 60s. Um, really active in the business. So, active meaning he's actively in it, right? He still cares about it. He's still in it. But he's an interesting example, because when we started working together in a coaching capacity, and we were talking about strategic transition. And I look at it with him in three different ways. Personal, what does it mean to have a personal transition plan? Like, he hadn't really thought about it much, right? What would he do if he's not in the business? Financial, and you might be surprised, somebody at that age not really having a financial plan, but doesn't. And the third aspect is business and business readiness. So we've been working together about 8 months or so, and he had pretty consistently said, wow, this is really eye-opening. And then what happens? Well, out of the blue, he gets approached by a strategic to inquiring about his business, being, is your business for sale? We'd love to talk to you. So now we switch gears. He and I switch gears, and I'm basically helping to be, an intermediary in the selling process, because this is all new to him. And long story short, it didn't work out for the right reasons. He's walking away, feeling comfortable walking away. It wasn't the right offer for him. Wasn't, just little, it didn't all line up. And there's power in that, to feel powerful that you can make
So
that
good.
decision. But the other part about it, he said, oh, I am 100%, I am ready to kind of jump back into transition planning work with you, because now I've seen firsthand what critique they had. And that's one of the biggest things. So the emotional part of it is, maybe because we fear it, right? We don't explore it. We don't know. He's embraced it because now he's gotten a sense of, gee, if I want to have a successful exit, it isn't about, um, me and my emotions, right? It's about the business and the continuity of relationships for our clients and ultimately what's the buyer going to succeed in. Now, when it gets with family and all these things, it can bog us down, and that can have a heavy load, and that feels kind of emotional. So he doesn't really have that at the moment. That could be another reason why there's kind of this, emotional nature to it. But for the people that don't spend any time planning, which is probably most people, planning their transition, planning their exit, it can feel a bit sometimes like we're getting pushed out, right? And when we feel like we're getting pushed out, it feels negative and heavy. And
Yeah.
um, but if it's your choice and you're leading the way and you're leaning in on it, it can be invigorating and energizing, especially if you start to envision how do you want to spend your time? You're talking about goal setting earlier as one of your superpowers. Well, when are we spending time thinking about our exit? Oftentimes when there's a problem, like you have a health issue, you're going through a divorce,
Yep.
or I talk to people all the time. They're like, I'm so burned out. Well, that's a negative thing, right? As opposed to a positive thing, which is I love what I do, but somebody else can take this to the next level. And it's got a great runway ahead of it. It's not going to crash and burn. That's interesting to a buyer, not, wow, this is in distress and you're going to inherit a turd and now you're going to, it's like buying the house. Then all of a sudden you find out there's a mold in the basement. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, great.
Yeah.
Now we got to invest another 100,000, get rid of the mold. That's a bummer. Um, so it's a really important question you're asking. And as you can imagine, everybody's got their snowflake situation, but I do think that those are a number of factors.
Do you see or have you seen a lot? Because I had a sales individual retire just this year, and he was at the company for I think 25 years, and he had a real like identity tie to work. And it was interesting because when we had deeper conversations around it, he was actually came on the podcast. So I said, you need to talk about this because there's many people in your same position wondering what to do. And I just want to, because work isn't my identity. So I can't relate to it's very important to me, but it's not me. Where I think there's an entire generation where that was it. And I think that separation is probably very hard.
It's so hard. And I think we can generalize a little bit here for sake of conversation, that the baby boomers definitely fall into that category. They've worked their whole life. That's all they know. Separating is very difficult. And there are a number of people who are never going to leave their seat. They
Yeah.
won't. They just won't. Um, Either because they financially can't, they don't see a way out, or they from identity reasons, just don't see any other thing to do. There's a real estate company here. The patriarch was well into his 90s. He would go into the office every day. He would read a newspaper, and he would write a couple of cards or notes to employees, and then he would go home. But it gave him that purpose. Now, was he running anything? No. Okay. And it's actually really charming that he did that.
Yeah, it is.
So that's an example where somebody can be, you know, there's ways to keep grandpa involved, but not let grandpa hold us back. Right. So that's the magic of good communications with your family and having good governance and, good advisors, maybe to help along the way, good management team. Because look, let's face it, if you're in a situation like I'll describe it in this situation, there was a guy, second gen. He calls me. He's a Vistage guy. He talks to me afterwards one on one because I do workshops for Vistage and other groups. And
Yep.
he goes, "Hey, can I just talk to you?" And I'm like, "Sure." And so he's telling me my dad's in the business. He's not ready to leave. We're really small. We're maybe 4 or 5 people. That it's a toxic environment. And the employees are wondering when is he leaving, and dad won't leave. Right. And so Gen 2 was in that stuck situation where he didn't have control. An aunt or a couple of aunts had equity. Dad has equity. He doesn't have much at all. He has no voice, but yet he's the guy running it day to day. And he's caught in the middle. He's caught in the middle, and it sucks. And we don't want to be in that. We don't want to be in that middle place, you know?
Yeah, it's tough. I call it founderism. I don't even, it's not a real word. I just like, it's so interesting. I think how the in versus on, and because I'm not a founder and I don't even really consider myself an entrepreneur, but like that separation is really super healthy for me, I feel, because I watched what it did to Al, and not being able to let go of that and carrying all that weight. I was just like, I can never be that person. You have to, that separation, but it's very hard when it's your baby and it's the emotional's high.
Yeah, very, very challenging for some people. I have another story. This is a crazy story. I have so many stories, it's funny.
That's good.
I was at a conference and I was on a panel, and I was on the panel with Gen 2. And Gen 1, her name was on the door. Okay. So Gen 1 has a travel company, prestige travel, premium travel, business travel, that kind of travel company. And two daughters. The two daughters, I don't know the detail, but the two daughters convinced mom, we need to sell. Now, to their credit, because they were 100% right, they sold the company to a major, major institution. And I don't know what the dollars were, but I'm sure it was worth their while. And you know when they did it, Brandon? Right before COVID. Talk about luck, right? Because
Wow.
there's no way you're selling a travel company in 2020. But I think their deal closed in 2019. So
Ooh.
holy crap, right? Or whatever it was, 2018, 2019. So we're on the panel in a few years later. I think it might have been like 2023 or something. And yeah, 2023, that's right. So let's say the company had been sold for 5 years. What do you think mom Gen 1 says about the deal? What do you think Gen 1 says?
Do you wish it wouldn't have happened?
Yeah, we shouldn't have sold. We were like, what? So she is my classic example of there are some people who just won't sell.
Yeah.
They just won't.
Yeah, it's really
Now, again, the daughters kind of forced it to happen. Uh, to their credit, again, I think who knows where that business would be today, but
fun. Well, and now
yeah.
with AI, it's even making things worse for that arena, because I mean, agents are now promoting that they can book your travel and do all this stuff. So it's fascinating. You outline 8 key drivers of business value in the book. If someone listening today could focus on improving just one to start, which would you recommend and why?
Financial performance is absolutely the best place to start. It's going to give you the most strong foundation to build upon. You can be a $40 million revenue business and have no profit.
Mm.
And that's not a strong financial position. Yeah. So having a profitable business, that's the key thing. So for those of you who are listening and wondering, well, what does that mean? Okay. Well, there's a number of different factors around financial performance. So I can unpack it a little bit. Consistency in how you track your business is key. So let's say your chart of accounts is kind of all over the place. You've changed bookkeepers and they keep changing things. And what was called this is now called that. Well, what does that mean? Well, over time, it's very difficult to look at categories when it's all over the place. So we want to make sure we have a consistency in our reporting so that you can get year over year view of which expense categories might be out of whack, or what's happening with revenue. Another opportunity that I do see, particularly for the AEC industry, architecture, engineering, design, construction. A lot of companies do a pretty good job, especially in construction. You guys do a great job of, your costs of your job, and then you can measure kind of gross profit by job.
Yep.
You'd be surprised though, Brandon, how many companies have no idea on gross profit by service area or gross profit by client. They have no clue. So the software that you guys have available in your industry, I think gives you that visibility. If anyone listening does not have that visibility, it's a great place to start. Think about it as cost of goods sold or cost to serve. If you're a service business and you have primarily just people, I work with a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot. I work with marketing service firms as well. And they are people, right? They're a people business. And so no one's exempt from this. Like you cannot escape. I will still give you this feedback that you should know what does it cost to serve and do the benchmarking. This is where somebody like myself and I have data, access to data. We look at data, we have KPIs, and we can help you see like where are the shortfalls. Other aspects of financial could be your cash flow. Are we measuring cash flow? Are we
Mm.
tracking cash flow? If we have negative working capital and we always have to keep borrowing, that's a tough business. I've seen some of those. It's very hard. Is your business bankable? We could spend a
Whoa.
whole show talking about banks and lines of credit and all that fun stuff. Um, it's kind of like money helps clear all the ills, and it's true to some extent. Um, so get your business kind of, hey, QuickBooks is good. I'm not saying you have to get some expensive software. Use QuickBooks, use it consistently, look at your numbers. And here's the other thing, especially for business owners who might be putting personal expenses through the business. I'm not going to say don't do that. I'm going to say make sure you're tracking it so that when somebody like me helps you in the future and wants to do a financial recasting exercise to understand if another person owns your business, what would they do differently? Well, we would remove these expenses and that expenses. If they're buried, then we're going to forget, we're not going to know they're there, and that affects your bottom line. If you're not paying taxes, if your strategy is to break even on your business or have a loss because you don't want to pay taxes, okay, but who's going to want to buy a business that's not profitable? So just have a holistic perspective on the business performance. Try to look at your business through a buyer's lens.
Oh man, I love all of that. Yeah, that's really, I've never heard anybody say, is your business bankable? That may be my new favorite
Oh God,
phrase.
I have it in the book too, because I talk with bankers,
Mhm.
and it's interesting to learn which banks, they gave me, I included one in the book as an example. I didn't name the bank, but I said, here's an example of the criteria. And they said, these are industries we are open to. And then they had a section that said, these are industries we're not.
Ooh.
Holy crap. What if you're in one of those categories, right? Now every bank and every, interest rates and all, everybody's got a lot of, jitters right now. And I think the lending environment's challenging generally. But yeah, being bankable, understanding what it means to service debt, which means you need to have, you need to have working capital. You need to have that cash flow. It all ties together.
I would say business finance was one of the hardest things for me to wrap my head around because it came from such the project world when I stepped into this role that I'm so grateful for my Vistage chair because she came from the banking world and she just gave me cheat sheets. It's like, you need to learn these things. You need to understand. We'll go through the P&L and the income statement every month when we do our one-to-one, and like just got me. And we got our controller in. It was just like, okay, repetition every month made it super, super comfortable. But it was so foreign to anything I'd seen before at that time. And you're right, now it's like a second language. And what's so great about it is the language is almost universal when it comes to business. It's almost like project management is universal. No matter what project you're building or doing, you can use the same words.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. That's amazing. You host the podcast Succession Stories, where you've interviewed a ton of founders and advisors. What's a surprising pattern or truth that emerged across those stories that most people don't realize about business succession?
It is hands down the number one thing people say as a truism is, I wish I knew what I know now earlier. That's A. And then a corollary is, I wish I did something about it sooner. So, the old adage, I think it's a Chinese proverb, the best time to plant a tree, it really was 20 years ago, but the next best time is now. And
Yeah.
that's the same thing with preparing your business, because here's the secret. You ready for the secret? The secret is everything we're talking about is going to help you run a more enjoyable business now. Like, why would you wait?
Ooh.
There's nothing in what I advise my clients to do that is let's wait 20 years for that. No, this is stuff we need to do to have a healthy business, to have a healthy relationship with our business. We as founders and CEOs and owners, we need balance in our lives, right? This is that three-legged stool I was talking about earlier, like personal, business, and financial. And we can get out of balance real easy, right? That's not hard to do. I think it's important to have a perspective of what's going to keep us in balance. And you remember Stephen Covey, one of his great things he wrote about was kind of the urgent versus the non-urgent, the important versus not. So the phone rings
Yep.
Urgent, not important. What do? We answer it. Okay. So the stuff that people think that, oh, working with Laurie is like, oh, that, it's not urgent. So it can wait. It can wait. I call those the can kickers.
Mm.
There's the can kickers who are literally 85 years old and they're going to just still kick the can until they kick the can, which is sad, but that's going to happen. And so what I'm trying to do is reach the folks who are the Gen Xers out there, just like me, maybe you, I'm guessing. I'm a Gen Xer. I embrace it. And, hey, message to all the Gen Xers out there. Let's do this. There's stuff to do while you still have the time and can make impact.
Mm. I love that you keep referencing a healthy business, because I think it's such a perfect, and I love KPIs. I love data. And I think there's so many good ways to track healthy business. I actually just wrote an entire speech around connecting a healthy business with culture, because I don't think you can have one without the other. I think we throw initiatives at culture all the time when we're in an unhealthy business. And that's why you have an unhealthy culture, because you're stressing about things about your business and not being able to reinvest, not being able to maybe do leadership courses or all of the things that could make people happy, because you may not have any extra money, maybe not have cash flow, maybe have whatever's making you unhealthy. That like culture always has to take a back seat because you're trying to survive. And I don't think those types of situations you're kind of running as your best self. And I think that leads to just kind of an unhealthy environment overall. Any thoughts around that? Does that seem stupid?
No, it doesn't seem stupid. It seems important. Why did you write a speech?
I think I want to get into speaking engagements. Or I want to do one just to see if I can do it, because I'm very much into testing the waters of things that terrify me. And and I had a couple ideas around. I just love culture. I love building it. I love it blossoming. And I realized that because I'm such a data KPI monster, that there's a connection there between those two worlds that I love. That I was trying to make a connection. The more I thought about it, I was like, interesting. How could you have a good culture if like you couldn't do it? I mean, you could do lots of free initiatives. You could get really creative and still have probably a good culture. But like, will the stress allow you to do that?
Yeah, it's like, where do we crash and burn? I've seen good cultures with bad leaders, sort of despite the bad leader. I've seen bad leaders ruin a good culture. Gosh, it's like the root, what makes a good culture. Sometimes it's the team environment, like a sub team environment. I love my sub team. I hate the bigger company, or
Yeah.
vice versa. Or I hate my boss, but I really like, where we are overall as a company, and I like what we're doing, cool tech or cool clothing or whatever. Yeah, and you can't just throw like a picnic at it. That's not going to create
Right,
a good
like pizza
culture.
party or whatever, right? All the
Yeah,
things.
the things. Yeah, I when I was a CEO, I had a bit of a challenge because I stepped into a succession environment. It was done a certain way, things were done a certain way, and then I was looking to change things. So a tool that I used, which was a lot of time and money and energy, was strategic planning. And I used that tool as a way to um, not only create the plan, because we needed to do that, but I also used it for like skip level development. So the people who were involved were my direct reports. And at the time I had a lot of vice presidents. So I don't know, there were probably 7 or 8 people in the room who had that VP title. And then I thought, wait a minute, you know what? There's a talent level that would really benefit from the exposure of the process. At the same time, also, I want their contributions. So then that next level down, I think, brought the room, I don't know, maybe 25 people or something. And it was really effective because then they were energized and it started to change the culture from a bottom up, because you can only do so much top down. And the bottom up part of it was really exciting to me.
I so agree. So, Lori, I'm spending half my summer working in every bay of the shop. So it's going to take me to about October. And I'm doing it in the summer because it's so freaking hot here. And I want to make sure I don't want the office to lose perspective of when we're really busy, how terrible it is to weld in 91-degree weather and when it's really, really humid. So the experiment, I'm doing it for 4 reasons, which I'm telling everybody the 4 reasons. One is perspective of what it's like to do this because I've never done anything. I'm mechanically deficient. I hate tape measures. I can't hang pictures. I can't do anything, which is also hilarious because I'm the most useless person in the shop. So like I'm getting the grunt work, but I love it because it's a part of the whole thing. Two, I'm a process improver. So I'm asking lots of questions, seeing the way things are operating, and I'm looking at process improvements and areas that we could almost lean sigmaing, even though I've never done one of those, but I'm actually keeping my nose in a chat run in GPT and then asking for, hey, how can I improve this process, and then third, just being street cred, like getting tons of just working next to people that I don't ever get to work next to. And it's just been amazing. And then doing a marketing piece that goes with it. But that bottom up is not hard to get there. You just have to literally effort, care, ask questions, fix things that are super annoying, ask people what is annoying. Don't be afraid to have those conversations. And I think more is more in the meetings that we think it should be less. I like inviting people just so they can understand what a meeting at this level feels like. How does it feel to get yelled at by a customer? Like being a part of those, I know my ex-president brought me into those, and it made a huge difference on my perspective of like, even if I don't have to say anything, this is what this pressure feels like. Because if you've never been through that, the first time sucks. And you don't want it to be critical when it's your first time. So I try to, I don't know. People tell me I bring too many people into too many things, and I'm like, everything's a learning experience. So
Yeah, I think there's reasons, to bring people into things. Boy, what you're describing about your shop floor, I spent time on the shop floor. One in college, I was an intern with a ball bearings
ooh, yeah.
manufacturing company, and they had a steering column group that just, the work process. I spent a day just taking this widget and putting it in this widget and pushing it together all day. I did that. And then, yeah, it was hot, it was the middle of summer, but it did give me the perspective that I think you're seeking of like, what is this job? Is this
Yes.
job? And obviously, and then fast forward when I graduated from undergraduate, I worked for a manufacturing company, and it was in the middle of Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
We were 3 shifts, non-union, and we had an office building attached to a very big facility. We made rolling stock. We made machinery that would roll out the door. We
Yep.
took steel and we made, literally the equipment would roll out the door when we were done. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. So we had the welding, we had the paint, we had everything. Now, I didn't work as a welder like you're doing, which I have a lot of respect. But one of the things that I did do was walk the floor. And yeah, I was wearing kind of, call it the office clothing because I worked in the office, but they liked seeing me
Mhm.
because I was a connection. We also had and I was in HR, right? So it was like my job. They were my customers as well
Yeah.
as the folks in the office were my customers. And the other thing was we had an employee involvement process. TQM, total quality management, was really important. And we had different teams that would get formed with specific projects to be completed, and work improvement was measured. So I don't know if that's something that you've explored, but it was really effective. It was not just our group. We were part of a global company, but we used the process, we measured it, and then it all kind of rolled up, and dollars saved or however it was measured was definitely tracked and celebrated. And we had awards annually and things like that. And it was a pretty complex thing to manage all of that. But let me tell you, the hourly guys that got involved, like, a lot of them got promoted, and they had a bigger perspective of the
Mhm.
work. And it was really important, I think.
Yeah, it's the gamification, right? So The Great Game of Business is like one of my favorite books that got me started down this like incentive plan and how they really got people engaged. And employee engagement, I think, is the hardest thing to do, but it's probably the most rewarding for everyone involved if you can reach that point. And like, because I can't do anything on the floor, what we build amazes me every day. And their ability to take basic materials and turn it into things that feed us is crazy to me. So whatever I'm doing out there doesn't even matter because I'm just looking around and seeing artists everywhere just building things that are just incredible. I love it so much. They're
That's
amazing.
good.
You've said most business owners are unprepared when it comes time to sell, even the successful ones. What's the biggest myth about what makes a business sellable? I know you said financial. Do you have anything else with
Oh
that?
goodness, what makes a business sellable? I'll kind of boil it down. I think a business needs to be attractive to a buyer. It needs to be ready for a transition, and it needs to have assets that are transferable. So those are the three big categories. Like all of them are big. So which one do you want to talk about?
The last one. I love that.
Okay. So what do I mean by assets would probably be a good follow-up question if that's on your mind.
Yeah.
An asset in this context is not necessarily a tangible asset. It could also be an intangible asset. So one of the exercises that I do with clients, and I think I have this in the book as well, is let's do an asset inventory. Not like, hey, go count how many widgets you have in your warehouse, but let's think about, hey, service businesses, this is for you too. What do you have? Well, I have a CRM database. Oh, cool. Okay. How big's your database? Do you have contracts? Do you have certain licenses? Do you have any certifications that are hard to get? Do you have, and then there's a degree of transferability for all of those things. Now, if you have a scale of 1 to 5 and say 5 is readily transferable, a 1 or a 0 is not so much, it doesn't mean you won't sell your business. It just means, well, maybe those things won't transfer and they have to be excluded, or it influences the type of transaction we're going to do. Is it an asset sale or an entity sale? And that we can nerd out on that in a moment. So it's just good to kind of take stock of those things so that we get a sense of it. Here's a classic example. Let's say you're a woman-owned business and you have a woman-owned business, small business certification. Cool. Okay, great. Let's celebrate that.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to ask questions. What % of revenue is tied to the certification? If it's a significant percentage, then that means there's potential risk to the buyer if they don't have the same qualifications to get the certification as you. So let's think about that. So we have veteran status. When we talk about the DC Beltway, this comes up a lot.
Mm.
There was a construction company in Ohio, and to the owner's credit, he has minority business owner status. And he said, 100%, absolutely, I want everybody in my business to know that the work we get is because of the quality of our work, not because of the status. So he's taking a whole other approach, right? And so he's not necessarily seeking projects because of it. Now he might be doing some of it, but let's just say the 80-20, he wants the 80% because of their reputation and the great work and so on. So that if and when he goes to sell one day, he's not going to take a haircut because the buyer's going to say, oh, well, we're not able to do what you're doing tied to that certification.
We had a Vistage presentation, not everything, but about an exit. But one of the things they said about preparing for was the trademarking. I didn't think about that. And we just recently went down that road and got completed because they're like, that could be an issue if you don't and someone else does. And then you're trying to, maybe that's one of the things you're thinking about, that the like the transferable asset, that's not a real thing. It is a real thing, but it's.
Yeah. If you have trademarks, if you have intellectual property, IP can be literally a trademark. It can be a patent. It can be a process patent. If we use the term a little more generally, it could be know-how. So the special know-how that's known how to do in your business. Are these things documented? Right. So, there's lots of things to address to help mitigate the risks around attractiveness, readiness, and transferability. But again, as we've been saying about time, can we put a mirror on it? Can we just put a spotlight on it so we know what the risks are? We know what we need to address. And then with time, we can address them.
Yeah.
It's when we run out of time, we run out of options.
Oh, man. There's some stuff in there I never even thought about either. That's really good. There must be so many things uncovered as you start combing through you start working with someone, you start combing through their documentation, their SOPs. You just have a laundry list of questions, I'm sure. And they're like,
oh, yeah. Well, it's so funny being a podcaster. I'm a pretty good question asker. Hopefully you felt that coming on my show. And it's a very intense and important skill as an advisor, right? Because I have to ask good questions. And at the time when I launched the show 5 years ago, I didn't really see the kind of the strategic importance of being a good interviewer, but now I do. And so, yes, to your point, I have to really uncover stuff. You're making a big assumption. If I can just kind of go back to what you just said, you said SOPs. I'm sorry. What if they don't have any SOPs? Like that is right. That's very, very common. They just do stuff. They don't write it down. They don't have a way of doing it. They're not productizing their service. And, 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 and then and we find ourselves in a turnaround.
I love that you said that about podcasting because I've noticed that as well. Let me ask you this. When you're prepping to meet a new person and it's not on the podcast, do you follow similar processes to get to know the person like you would prep for an episode?
If I'm getting to know a prospective client,
or you're just going to meet someone like we had a congressman in yesterday, and
sure.
so I did almost a similar process I would to prep for a podcast because I wanted to ask them really interesting questions because their life is really interesting.
Yeah, I probably go into a little more depth of preparation on the podcast, or not depth, but like in a different way.
Sure.
So for example, for you on your LinkedIn, I picked out that, your catchphrase that you like things weird and stuff. I probably, glance at their LinkedIn and I get to know their website and I'm looking for things, but it's at such a more of a meta level that I'm trying to understand, why are we having this conversation? What is on their mind? What's challenging them?
Yeah.
And it's when I really get to know them, as once they become a client, that I can kind of unpack tell me more about your family and, that kind of thing. Yeah. I think on the podcast, we give ourselves a little bit of leeway to have a business conversation, also have some fun and weave in some personal things. In preparation, the research skills are really the core, just getting to get them to open up and maybe saying some things that makes them feel comfortable. And I think, like the sales process, if you've gone through any sales training or anything, or if folks have gone through sales training, it's really important to build rapport.
Yeah.
And show that you care and that you've taken the time to look at their website to understand a little bit about them. And by the way, you should also look at news articles and see if there's any bad news out there about them. You always want to sort of know that before you go into something.
That's I don't think I've done that yet. I'll add that to my
word to the wise. Yeah, exactly.
Laurie, this is over.
Beep.
So you work with both founder-led and family businesses. How different are these conversations, especially when legacy, emotion, generations are all in play?
I shared a couple examples today about the legacy. It can be so tricky. It can also be when there's a family business, there's spouses involved, or brothers or sisters. So there's definitely more dynamics and more emotion in call it family-led enterprise than founder-led. Founder-led, they're interesting because they sometimes will say, yeah, I'm thinking about it that I'm Gen 1. They're thinking ahead, which is really interesting. Although I had one woman come on my show. She was a founder with was it her sister? Yeah, I think with her sister. And they ended up selling the business. But for a time, she thought maybe she'd sell it to her son. So when we talked about it in retrospect, she said, yeah, I was a founder, but I guess now I can see how I could have been, kind of a Gen 1 leader. But I think when you start a business, it's so hard to know where it's going, and the emotion of it. I do hear from the founders, they'll say things like, it's my baby. Whereas a next gen leader really doesn't say that. It's started to be viewed as more of an asset and something to grow and something to take care of. But the Gen 1s, the founders, this is their baby.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so interesting as well. It's like it's a family member, probably because you've been through so much turmoil and pain and emotion and glee, and like there's all that wrapped, and you probably spend a ton of time there, probably maybe even more time than with your family,
Yeah.
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 In your book, you talk about owning the value of your business, not just running it. Can you break down what that means for a founder who's too caught up in the day-to-day to see the big picture?
Oh gosh, like how many times are we standing in the way of our business having more value? A classic example is sales. If you're the owner of the business and you're running sales and you're driving at least 40% or more of revenue, you're the rainmaker, and rainmaker companies are less transferable, or perceived as less transferable, perceived as less valuable, because if you're not in the business, what will happen to the pipeline? What will happen to sales? What will happen to customer relationships? So an owner dependency problem can be a value problem. You talked about 8 drivers before. That's one of them, right? To have and identify owner dependency problems and address them.
How long does it take to get somebody out of something like
Oh gosh. Well, take the travel company. The answer would have been never. She's dying. I like to say, look, you're going to leave your company. 100% of you are going to leave your company one day. Okay. Either horizontally or vertically.
Ooh.
Right? It's going to happen. So horizontally or vertically, and boots on or boots off for those of you in Texas, or, you love your cowboy boots. So yeah, I mean, how long? Gosh, it's all about control. Okay. Who controls the board? Who is the owner? If grandpa is 100% owner and grandpa's 97 and grandpa's not going anywhere, he's not going anywhere. Grandpa's not going to fire himself. Okay. There needs to be a forcing mechanism known as a board or a family board or something that's going to take the 100%, shift it around. I'm not a fan of 50-50 for the record. So have, 51-49, please. Please don't do 50-50. But you got to start to plan. If you're 97 and you're listening to the show and you have 100% share of your company, please plan and do something about that.
Why not 50? Why 51-49?
Oh my goodness.
Decision making?
What if you can't agree?
Yeah. Gotcha. Because we can't forget that the business most likely has teammates, employees, and this all affects everyone in the business. Yeah.
You have customers, you have stakeholders, community.
Looking around corners is one of your specialties. What's one major pitfall in succession planning that most leaders never see coming until it's way too late?
They for many companies who envision a transfer to management, I have seen and heard so many sob stories that my key employee, my second in command, I thought he or she was going to take over my business. Not only did they not want it, they quit. That is it's so hurtful. They feel so betrayed. And that is a two-way street, my friend. That means there was zero communication about that you had your sights set on something. That person was not a fit for whatever reason. Not everybody's wired to be an owner. You came on my show called The Entrepreneur Gene, and we talked about this for a reason. You're wired a certain way. I'm wired a certain way. So is everybody. And not everybody is wired to be an owner. They don't want the risk. They don't want to take on the responsibility, or they just don't have the risk. They're risk averse. For the companies that think they're going to have a management transfer, please, please, please call me, because it is so sad. It's so sad.
Yeah.
When it falls apart and then it's like, oh.
Now what? Well, that is sad.
It's really sad. I had a client, this was kind of during COVID, his number 2, he thought he was, going to have an exit to his number 2. He was pretty, not junior, young and tenure wise, if I can say it that way. And had a lot of years in front of him, but the owner was thinking, 5 to 7 years, maybe he'll want to buy it. Well, what happens during COVID? He and his wife moved to Spain. And I said to my client, well, there goes option A. That's not happening. Not happening.
It's got to feel betrayal.
You don't control people. And
Correct.
So if you never talk to them about it and you just assume they want it. I had a husband-wife talk to me about their 3 sons. And we did a diagnostic, kind of a subjective and a quantitative interviews, and then surveys and tools to do some assessments of the three boys, and have some conversations with the 3 boys about their intentions. That's a good example of being proactive.
Yeah, it's really good. Open, transparent conversations around what everybody wants separately, so you can kind of bring all the data back and say, this is really what it looks like. Yeah, that's really good. For business owners who are years away from a transition but want to build options now, what are 2 or 3 questions they should be asking themselves this quarter?
I think go to financial performance. Do they have a track record of consistency and improvement in their results? If not, you got to poke the bear, ask why 5 times, and really try to get to the root of what's not working financially. And another one would be owner dependency. Just take a long, hard look in the mirror and see where the business is really over reliant on you. And it's summertime, so it's a great time to kind of check in that if you're taking a vacation, can you truly unplug? Can you truly unplug, not check voicemail, not check email? And if the answer is no, then check in on why. Is it that the team really needs you, or that it's your issue and you can't untether? And then do a hindsight with your team. Like, if you do unplug, just see how it went. How did it go? If you weren't able to untether, set a goal for the next time you're going to take some time out so here, start baby steps, like half a day, 2 days, work yourself up to 5, right? So that when you're on vacation, truly, you can unplug because you deserve a break too.
Yeah, that's really good. Sorry about that. I'm going to let him out real quick. Hold on. He literally scared me.
Your dog.
Yeah, he's a big boy, so he scared me. That was really good. No, those are 3. Oh, I love the vacation one. It surprises me how many people can't, like, at all.
Yeah.
Like, have to take a phone, have to take a laptop, at least get on some calls. I actually defend our people. Like, I defend our people against customers around that, especially PMs, because PMs, everybody wants them to be on all the time. And, like, if your project can't last a week while they're off, then we have a bigger problem. We have to figure that out. So I love protecting time off. You've got it. Yeah. You've guided so many leaders through the next thing. What does your next chapter look like? Is there something new you're chasing professionally or personally that energizes you right now?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm working on a professional brand website. I've never done that before. I've tried my best to do it myself. And I looked in the mirror and I said, I am the blocker in this situation. And I decided to work with an agency partner, and they've been really fabulous. So it's not live yet, but I guess depending on when people listen to this episode and go to my website, they'll see it. And so I'm going to have a personal brand website, tightening up what I say about myself, where I show up. You talked about speaking engagements. I'm really focusing on the AEC industry. And I'm going to be spending more time because I work so well with analytical leaders. It just fits, right? We're looking at data and numbers and structure, and they think that way too. So I think it's an industry focus and kind of niching down, which is also part of the advice that I give clients. And so I'm finally eating my own dog food on that. And I'm just super excited about it because it's a bit of a risk, right? To feel like, oh, well, and it doesn't mean I can't work with somebody in a different industry. Of course I can, but to have a focus, be out there, be known for it. So I'm updating all the socials. I'm updating my website, right? New brand site, and how I kind of show up. And so it's all the same material. It's all the same knowledge and know-how. But, even like today, I was able to share a lot of specific stories that might be interesting to the more technical leaders. And I'm going to continue to do that.
Well, that's congratulations. That's exciting.
Thank you.
Super
Yeah.
wonderful. If someone's on here going, oh my God, I've looked in the mirror, Laurie, this is terrifying what I'm seeing, until the website's up, or where do you want them to go right now?
Well, I have a website right now. It's certainly live, and they're welcome to check it out. It's btsherpa.com, btsherpa.com. And I have lots of goodies there. And if they want to get a free digital download of my book, they're more than welcome to do that. It's /book, make it easy for you. So btsherpa.com/book. They can get my book and lots of other things to enjoy. And if they want to reach out to me, there's a way to contact me and stuff. And LinkedIn is a great way too.
And that's Laurie Barkman, Barkman on LinkedIn.
Laurie. That's right.
True. Well, thank you for doing this.
Shorthand, if I can give my email, I'm happy to. Yeah. Laurie, Laurie at btsherpa.com.
I love that website name. It's so fun.
Thank you.
One, thank you. I learned a ton today. Even around concepts I thought I knew. I think you brought a lot of insight. Things I think we do well, things I think we can greatly improve on, and just having insight of the M&A world, what it looks like, what they're looking for. I think the financial acumen is enormous. And now that we're moving in that direction, I feel like I have more control over that. It's super helpful in that world. Yeah, that was really helpful. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for having me on yours. I think you were one of my first podcasts I actually got invited to. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, you did a great job.
Thanks. They're scary.
You too. You're pro. Out there.
Yeah, I think this is number 79. So you've been going for 5 years. Whew.
Yeah, I have 207 episodes in the world.
That's amazing. What's the one, besides getting really good at asking questions, what's the second thing that you think you've taken from doing that many episodes?
It's having more confidence to literally answer any question that is thrown at me with zero preparation.
Oh, yeah, I agree. It's a muscle. You can flex.
It is a muscle and it's a flex. And, the speaking and the workshops and the webinars and the guiding and talking one-on-one, like they all interrelate. And it just, the more you kind of dial into it, it's in your brain and it just becomes more and more, you get more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's not like I haven't memorized anything. This is just stuff I know. You know what I mean? And it makes it fun and interesting and very authentic. I try to be very authentic and approachable and at the same time, just adding value bombs wherever I can. I mean, I just try to share knowledge and an intention of helping, and hopefully that kind of goodness comes back.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And I think the stories you brought are so helpful in context because we can, one, as human beings, relate so much to stories, especially people who have a similar story of something we're going through, right? And then we're just like, Laurie, help me. So thank you once again. This was wonderful. And you spent an hour and 7 minutes.
You are so welcome. And it's so much fun. You're great to talk to.
Thank you.
And I know we're going to talk again. I can feel it.
Yes, we certainly will. And everyone, we will catch you on the next one.